Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. This is my twice weekly live show. It is Sunday the 10th of March. It's show number 414. And we have Kevin along. Good morning, Kevin. In today's show, then, we have a story told by a rider to a court after he was caught with fake plates, no license, no insurance, and with drugs in his system. He was on a bucket list trip that he was taking because of his failing health. A bike stolen in Edinburgh has been returned 5 years later to its German owner by Greater Manchester Police. A grenade throwing incident has prompted a Philippines city to ban full face helmets in an unusual decision. And there's another unusual decision. It's a finance offer from Ducati, which I'll be having a quick look at. In the US, there's a recall out on CF Moto model and also on Livewire's Del Mar S2. And then finally today in depth we'll also have a look at another electric model Zero and ask why it is that they might have actually fitted a clutch to their gearless electric bikes, because they've just filed a patent for that, which seems a fairly bizarre move to me, but hey ho, there probably is some kind of reason for it. Don't forget, if you've got any questions, any comments, anything you want to ask or say, do drop me a line. Always very interested to hear what you have to say. And Sue has looked in, which so good to see you too. Right, okay, so on with the show then. Right, first thing to say, a bit of housekeeping. Now, for reasons that I will explain in a few weeks' time, I won't be able to run live shows over the next few weeks, and the next live show will actually be Sunday 31st of March. Now I will be putting up some short pre-recorded content on the Sundays and Wednesdays just to keep you interested for those weeks when I can't be delivering a live show. I will tell you what's going on the 31st. That also means I won't be able to restart my on-road training either, which normally kicks off about this time of year. So it looks like Monday the 1st of April Fool's Day of course, will be the first day I will be taking bookings for live training. Anyway, on with the weather. Now don't forget, if you are out there on the bikes for the next few days, always a good idea to keep an idea on what's going on, and it turns out that we have yet another mixed bag of weather over the next few days. Now it's all remaining fairly changeable. Be cloudy and wet for most of us today. It's a bit damp outside at the moment. I'm not sure it's actually raining, but it certainly has been. There'll be some snow over the northern Scottish hills, but again, not the 500-mile wall of snow that some of the comics were predicting just a day or two ago. There will be some sunny spells and scattered heavy showers down in the southwest. That's where the best of the weather looks like it'll be today. Now tonight the rain is due to ease for most of us, but there will be a few light showers persisting for the east and possibly on some western coasts too. Now Monday looks like it's going to be a largely cloudy day, just the odd clear break along the far western coasts, but rain will arrive into the southwest and west overnight. Further east and also in Northern Ireland there will be a few spells of light rain from time to time, and it will stay pretty cloudy. Now Tuesday shows the breeze picking up again. It was pretty windy yesterday, for example, and rain will be moving into the west again, and the cloud remains over the east, but it should stay dry over on the eastern side of the country. Wednesday looks like the best day. It looks largely dry, a few spells of rain across the west, but it will remain windy in the north. But it will be a very mild day. Temperatures in general have been pretty mild. February was actually the warmest month on February on record again, but temperatures on Wednesday up to 12 degrees in the north and perhaps even as high as 15 Celsius in the south. That's pretty warm for the time of year. Okay, so moving on to the news for motorcyclists, what's been going on in the world of biking. Well, the first story involves a chap called Carl Dawson. He was apparently returning from the Lake District to Leeds and on his MT-09, his Yamaha, on the evening of September the 2nd last year, when he was stopped on the A65 by police who had laid a stinger across the road. That's one of those expanding devices designed to puncture tyres. Now, why'd they done that? Basically, he was suspected of riding a stolen bike, because the bike that he was actually riding had a plate belonging to a motorcycle which had been stolen that very day. Now, he actually managed to avoid running over the spikes. He stopped before he got there, and when questioned by police, he admitted that whilst the bike was not actually stolen, the registration plate was cloned. Now, why was he on fake plates? Well, his legal counsel said that Dawson had suffered ill health following a heart attack, and he had devised a bucket list of things to do, which included riding a motorcycle. And as he'd had a second heart attack, he decided to speed things along, and so he had set off for the lakes on this MT-09. Now, unfortunately, he didn't have a motorcycle license either, just a theory test pass. And of course, with no license, he also had no insurance. And when he was routinely drug tested at the side of the road, he failed that too, and he was promptly arrested, and he failed a blood test. Now, so not surprisingly, he appeared at Skipton Magistrates Court last week, when he was banned from driving for 16 months, fined £140, ordered to pay costs of £85, and a surcharge of £56. Now, his counsel apparently added that Dawson's last remaining bucket list mission was to jump out of an aeroplane, and he was told, the court was told, I advised him against it, as with his luck, the parachute probably won't open. Well, I can't say that getting caught with no license, no insurance, with a fake cloned plate on a 900cc motorcycle sounds like bad luck to me. It sounds pretty much like that was a fairly well-planned expedition. Anyway, moving on to another police-related story. Back in September 2023, Greater Manchester Police responded to a report of males making off from the scene of a minor crash in Salford. The motorcycle had sustained minor damage after colliding with a tree, but the riders who scarpered were suspected of being involved in criminal activities. So the police recovered the bike. It turned out again to have a false plate, and this time the bike was identified as stolen. Now, it took some fairly extensive inquiries apparently and assistance from specialist officers in Europe, but they eventually traced the bike to Germany, where Interpol contacted the German registration authorities, and they located the bike's original owner, who duly provided the necessary proof of ownership. So the good news for that particular rider is, rather than being crushed, his bike, which looks, I think that's probably a 650 single, isn't it? I think his bike was returned to him. Now, the machine was actually stolen while the owner was actually visiting Edinburgh 5 years ago. So for 5 years, that machine has been under wraps somewhere, either being ridden on the road on a fake plate or simply not being ridden. And vehicle examiner Dave Murphy, he's from the Greater Manchester Police Stolen Vehicle Examination Unit, he said this was pure determination and a team effort to find the rightful owner. With the UK out of the European Union, now direct access to systems from forces in other countries has meant it has been harder for us to track and trace, but with other inventive ways of working and the help of our recovery agents Mansfield, we were able to return the motorbike to the rider. So there we have another bonus Brexit result. Now, okay, what have we got for you next? That's not the right, good lord. That's the correct banner. Now, in an era when most safety bodies around the world are trying to get anyone using a motorcycle or a scooter to use a helmet, Bacolod City, which is a municipal a municipality in the western Visayas region of the Philippines. They've just implemented a ban on all full-face motorcycle helmets. Why is this, you may be wondering? Well, it turns out that 2 weeks or so ago, an individual wearing such a helmet was arrested by police for allegedly throwing a grenade in a crowded area. The explosion injured 3 people, damaged 2 vehicles, and the authorities appear to believe the individual was making use of the full face helmet to hide his identity. And within a single day, an executive order number 86 was issued mandating that full face helmets can't be worn within the confines of the city. Which obviously impacts everybody in the area who does wear a full face helmet. How are they going to police that? I don't know. Are they going to pull over everybody wearing a full face helmet? Furthermore, they imposed a lower speed limit on motorcycles too, just 40 kilometers per hour, 25 miles per hour. I have no idea what that means in terms of other vehicles for the Philippines, but presumably it means motorcycles now have to travel more slowly than the traffic around them, which is bonkers, particularly as the claim was that it was done in order to reduce the risk of accidents, possibly to reduce the risk of facial injuries if somebody falls off now not wearing a full face helmet. But Bacolod City still recommends the use of open face helmets. That is one of the weirder stories that I've come across for quite a while. Now we have a couple of other comments. John says, pinned down by persistent drizzle in later. He'd like to go to Havant later to watch his daughter play football, but probably choose to take the car. I don't blame you, actually. Kevin says the sun out is near on the coast near Havant. Bo says it's raining in Cambridge. And Kevin says apparently UK summer will be Thursday this year. Yeah, it's been a pretty miserable February, but it has been very warm and mild. So there is a silver cloud, a silver lining in the big grey clouds that have been dumping rain over us, perhaps. All right, now, if you are interested in a new Ducati, you may be interested in their one-of-a-kind finance offer that they've been making a bit of a noise about just recently. So here's how it works. You pay half now, and then you ride off on the bike. Then in 2 years' time, you choose what you're going to do next. You can either pay the remaining 50% and there's no interest on the balance, or you just give back the keys and walk away. Now, Ducati say the deal will give customers access to a brand new bike, totally interest-free and with no monthly repayments, and just that upfront deposit of 50% when you ride away on it. Now, of course, it really can't quite be as simple as that, because obviously the bike gets used, and so the final value of the machine has to be less than the retail purchase price, which you would be paying when you choose to keep the bike and pay that 50% the second instalment. If you ride 50,000 miles a year, for example, something I used to do as a courier, you'd be handing back a 2-year-old bike with 100,000 miles on the clock. Now, the value of such a machine to Ducati would be peanuts. So essentially, you'd be riding around for 2 years on a half-price brand new machine. Ducati would get back something fit probably only for the scrap heap. So there has to be some small print. Now, I haven't bothered to check, but I would assume that you'll find that there's some kind of annual mileage limit, which means you can't ride lots and lots of miles on it. Probably won't bother a lot of motorcyclists, but hey-ho. There's probably also a requirement to have the bike dealer service, and that may cost you rather more in the pocket because Ducatis are pretty expensive to service, so I'm reliably informed. Now, right now, the offer only applies to the 3 800cc Scrambler models. That's the 9,995 Icon Scrambler and the 10,995 pound full throttle and night shift models. Now, I can honestly say I don't think I've seen any of those bikes being ridden on the road, and that might be a hint as to why Ducati are apparently being so generous. It may be that they have these machines sitting around in showrooms unsold, so they might be wanting to clear out last year's model, for example. The other factor that might count is that for the first time in quite a few years, so long as you exclude 2020 and COVID, Ducati's sales in 2023 have slipped back from a steady climb. They've been climbing, I believe, since around about 2000. Anyway, they were down to under the 60,000 that were registered in 2022. Only by a little bit, but it is down. It's only 0.5% their global sales, but it's where they fell, which is interesting. They were down 4% plus in Europe. They fell almost every market across the world, including India, where they've been targeting the sort of upwardly mobile motorcycle market there. They fell by 14.1% in India. North America, that was up 2.3%, and their figures were buoyed up by South America. There was a really positive growth trend there, up almost 50% in South America. Now, my thinking here is that Ducati lack an affordable entry-level model, and I don't think it's any coincidence that the 600 and 620 monsters were parts bin specials, but they sold extremely well. They sold by the container load. They were modestly priced, they were fun to ride, they're just enough performance to be interesting, and at the time they were very different looking. And the Scramblers, well, I don't think that they have a particularly unique look anymore. Everybody's got a Scrambler in the range. I personally don't like that styling at all, but hey ho. But if you want to compare it with something else that you can buy which has a similar, if not better performance, go and have a look at the MT-07 or even Honda's Hornet 800. The MT-07, the base model, is just over 7.5k, so that is anything up £2,500 to £3,500 saving. That's pretty a significant amount of money to put towards your insurance, your clothing, your petrol, or whatever if you're a new biker. Now, okay, a quick shout out to my coffee supporters last week. Sandy, Howard, Nick, Nafa, Hallam, Kelvin, Helen, Charles Keitel and Anonymous, thank you very much indeed for your support. Now, if I've got the QR code right, that is the QR code for the Survival Skills coffee page. If you do open up the page, you can have a look at what's over there. If you choose to become a supporter or even a subscriber, so a monthly payment, you get access to the Survival Skills archive. One-off supporters, they get access to well over 1,000 better biking articles per month. If you become a subscriber, you open up all those plus extra content over there. I really challenge you to read all that content in a month, but you can have a crack at it if you want to. So I say that the Survival Skills archive definitely has to be the biggest and best resource of better biking rider information anywhere on the internet. Do tell people about it, and we will hopefully get more people over there and reading the content. Now, moving on with the news, what else has been happening? The CF Moto, they have recalled a 450 SS in the US. Now, this is a fairly new bike. It wasn't long since it's been launched, but it seems that what CF Moto call excessive local shear stress and vehicle vibration could break the rubber rings holding the T-box in place. That's the telemetrics box, and if that happens, CF Moto says the untethered T-box could fall into the front fork and interfere with steering, thus increasing the risk of a crash. I love the way they say increasing the risk of a crash. The implication is that even when everything's working properly, you could have a crash. Anyway, the fix, you'll be surprised to hear, is an improved rubber band, but they do also add a new support bracket to hold the thing in place. Now, CF Moto's dealers, they will be installing this updated kit on new bikes before they're sold on to customers. And if you've already taken possession of a new machine, but one which is affected, you will get a recall notice to head back to your dealer and have the kit fitted. Now, it affects 1,700 bikes produced between February the 6th and March the 7th last year, and even though the market in the US is obviously much bigger than the UK, that is actually a pretty impressive sales figure for the new CF Moto. Certainly seems that Americans are much more ready to accept CF Moto as a means of getting around than UK riders. And dealers, incidentally, they got an official warning basically to say that if they skip doing the update to their bikes, which are on their showroom floor, they assume sole liability for any accidents, claims and or liabilities that may arise from such a sale, and basically they will hold the CF Moto free from these claims. Now, another bike which is under recall at the moment is the Livewire S2 Del Mar motorcycle. That's the Harley Davidson electric offshoot. It affects all their 2024 models. Now this time it's a software issue, and it seems that this could shut down the electric powertrain without warning. It seems to be something to do with voltage sensor, and if it happens when the bike is in motion, the machine may not be able to be restarted, so presumably you would just coast to the side of the road. Not a good thing on a smart motorway in the UK, or probably some American freeways. Now it's believed that 523 bikes from the US are involved, and they were produced between July 2023 and January the 30th 2024, so it's taken a rather longer time for the problem to be identified. Now Livewire says that it'll be sorted via an over-the-air software fix, so owners will be able to do that themselves if they want to, or if they don't feel confident to update their ECUs online, then they can go to an authorized Livewire dealer and they'll have the update there performed free of charge. Right, okay, so fairly short show today, and I will be moving rapidly now onto the in-depth item, which is all about Zero, and I'll be asking why it is that Zero have filed a patent for a clutch on their electric motorcycles. Now this is also from the US, is where the story broke, Zero being obviously a US manufacturer, but they do sell in, I won't say reasonable numbers, but they have been selling fairly steadily over here. I've actually got a Zero dealer just a mile or so from my front door, which is rather interesting. Anyway, they have put in a patent for a clutch system for their electric motorcycles, but the big question has to be why. Now, what does a clutch do? The clutch allows you to disconnect the drive from the motor to the rest of the drive chain. You can bring in the power from the motor, you can take it away again. And the reason that we have clutches on motorcycles really is to allow for three things. Now, the first one is obvious. You can disconnect the drive to the rear wheel when you're stationary. It also allows you to shift between the gears of a manual transmission. That was fairly easily. And the third one is actually starting the engine. Now, the earliest motorcycles actually lacked any form of clutch, and so the only way to start them was to either paddle them off or run alongside, push start them and then jump on, which obviously is moderately fraught with some risk. I managed to fall off a motorcycle myself trying to bump start it. Now, fitting the clutch allows you to start the engine when the bike is stationary, because the engine starts but the back wheel doesn't start immediately turning. And of course the other problem was stopping again. You would have had to have killed the engine to have come to a halt. So not surprisingly, a clutch was a pretty early development in the development cycle of the petrol engine. Now gears, they came next, and basically what they allowed is that the engine could now achieve a wider range of operating speeds than just a single gear. If you think single gear bicycle, your top speed is limited entirely by how fast you can spin the pedals. So fitting gears onto a bicycle basically allows you to accelerate from a standstill in a low gear and then progressively go up through the gears till you reach a cruising speed which matches a comfortable pedaling rate. And for that reason, you know, modern racing bicycles often have sort of 24 speeds or so. Now geared motorcycles obviously do exactly the same. Having started the engine with the clutch disengaged, we then set off in a low gear, and we then progressively change up through the gears as the speed increases. Now the clutch also helps to smooth out the shifting between the gears, and it was certainly very important on some on earlier motorcycles, and although with some modern bikes it's not quite so necessary. You've got quick shifters that can take advantage of the sort of the smooth engagement of modern gears. But I'll be honest, most machines that I've ridden, we don't have quick shifters. Actually, it's a lot easier to go down the gearbox using the clutch. And of course, you've still got that clutch there for stopping and starting. Now, automatic scooters, they usually use some kind of centrifugal clutch that it sort of grips harder when the engine revs rise, and it disconnects again when the revs drop. But there's usually some transmission of power from the engine to the back wheel, even when the bike's stationary. So that usually means keeping a brake on to ensure your scooter doesn't move. Now, bikes like Honda's DCT, they've eliminated the clutch lever, but they've done this by having a pair of electronically operated clutches. And again, what they do when you're at a standstill is they disconnect the engine from the back wheel, and as the speed rises, they make a choice of when to change gear depending on the mode that you set it on and the revs that the engine's displaying, and also how hard the throttle's open, I think. Now, what about electric motorcycles? Now, some electric motorcycles do have conventional gearboxes. In fact, they were very quickly found that they were actually necessary to get a fast lap in and also battery economy on the old TT0 racers. The first ones that appeared were single speed, but very quickly they put conventional style gearboxes onto those electric motorcycles, and they have also found their way onto some electric bikes. They're on a German brand whose name escapes me at this very moment, and also on some new Kymcos as well, which I talked about just recently. But the Zeros, they don't have any kind of a gearbox. Basically, they are like those old single speed bicycles. They have a direct connection from the motor to the rear wheel, and the big difference though between a petrol engined motorcycle and an electrically powered motorcycle is that at a standstill the electric motor's not spinning like the petrol engine would do. Basically, no current being fed to the motor, the electric motor simply stops moving. So there's no transmission of power through to the rear wheel that needs interrupting at a standstill. As soon as you open the throttle, current is fed to the motor spins and the bike moves. It's as simple as that. And then the rate of acceleration and the eventual speed, thanks to the lack of gears, is set entirely by your throttle opening on the bike. So why is Zero suggesting a clutch? Well, here's a quote from their they're talking about the clutch lever, why it might be on there. They say, for example, rapidly releasing the left-hand clutch lever, or control lever they call it, from its fully engaged position may cause the controller to demand a short burst of torque from the motor that exceeds the torque demand indicated by the position of the throttle, simulating or replicating the feel of dropping the clutch in a vehicle that includes a multi-gear transmission clutch. Well, I read that about 10 times and I still can't make any sense of it. Dropping the clutch, what are they talking about here? Well, if you drop the clutch, what you're generally doing is you're going from a sort of a fully held in position to releasing it, and that doesn't lead to an engine delivering more torque. The torque is set by the throttle, and the engine, the way the engine is performing. It's nothing to do with letting the clutch out fully, suddenly delivering more torque. That's not what happens. In fact, it's the opposite. If you ease the clutch in and you break that direct connection to the rear wheel and you start slipping the clutch, then basically you're reducing the torque. This is what we're doing when we're doing slow control, for example. Now, the other thing that it does appear is that if you pull the clutch in, you are going to allow the bike to coast. So that would defeat your regenerative braking, which is delivered through the motor, braking the rear wheel, and that would of course have the effect of reducing your range because you're not charging the motor up every time you slow down. Now, I could possibly imagine that there might be times that you don't want the regenerative braking operating on the back tyre. Maybe when you've got it turned up high to get the max range out of the bike and you suddenly ride over something very slippery, maybe fuel spill on the surface, maybe mud, or maybe you've gone off-road onto grass, wet grass for some reason. But since the machine's fitted with ABS, I'm struggling even with that possible explanation, so I really can't understand that. If you've got any ideas on why Zero might want to fit a clutch to a motorcycle with an electric motor and no gears, please drop me a line. I would love to hear what you have to think about that. Personally, I think it is likely to be a gimmick. Right, okay, so we have a few more comments. Nick's here. Good morning to you, Nick. Kevin says something controversial about Ducatis. I know somebody uses a Ducati regularly to get around. Yeah, and she loves it. Had it for years. Anyway, Paul's here as well. Good morning to you, Paul. That is it from me today. So that does bring us to the end of today's show. Now, if you missed any of last week's articles, don't forget you can get them by subscribing to my Substack newsletter. There are links to that available. I've lost the link that I was going to show you, but anyway, go and have a look for that and you'll find all the links come up in one handy email delivered straight to your email box. And last thing, of course, please do head over to the buttons which say subscribe and like, and do press them if you haven't done so already. As always, a moment of your time to support the webcast like this does help other motorcyclists to find and discover my content. So subscribe and like if you possibly can. That's what helps other people find the channel. Right, now that's it for today. Don't forget, this is the last live show until the 31st of the month, last Sunday in March, and I will explain the reasons for that when I come back on live. There will be, as I said, there'll be short pre-recorded items just to keep you interested over the next couple of weeks while I'm not available to perform live shows. All right, thank you once again for looking in. Always good to see you. Comments, questions, anything you want to say, drop me a line. I will try to get back to you. That's it for today. If you are out there, do stay shiny side up on your bikes.